what the WHO are attempting to do, because many Australians either don't know what's happening or mistake this as some kind of conspiracy theory.
Okay, the very basis that's in the IHR amendments that anyone can look up online is that they are changing from a non-binding recommendation to a legislative authority that will make legally binding proclamations on Australia. So that's one of the biggest changes. That's Article 1 of the IHR, nothing conspiracy theory about it. And then we go into a lot of the other changes. Article 3 actually removes the term fundamental full respect for the dignity, human rights and fundamental freedom of persons, which I don't think is probably anything that our government should be supporting. And some questions that we hope to be able to put to Parliament are basically around that phrase and how that has bipartisan support at the moment.
Yes, well, removing phrases about fundamental human rights isn't exactly on brand with what we expect our politicians to be getting up to. And in your speech to Parliament, you said, and I'm going to quote here, the amendments seek to change the WHO from an advisory body to a governing body whose recommendations would be mandatory and legally binding under international law, end quote. Now, that is a significant change to the structure of health policy in this country, where the states have been primarily responsible for health decisions with a little bit of help from the federal government in the event of a pandemic. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, but I don't believe the Australian public have ever been asked for or consented to or voted on a structural change to our health system. I mean, I don't remember this at the last election.
No, unfortunately, this will not be voted on by Parliament either. Any changes to law that may have to happen will be fait accompli. They will happen after these amendments have already been approved. Because they're amendments, they don't have to go to Parliament. That is different with the pandemic treaty, but unfortunately, a lot of the more onerous proclamations and demands are in the amendments. And that is a point that we're still trying to get across to a lot of Parliament.
Well, just let's clarify that, because the pandemic treaty sounds pretty ominous. And now I remember I wrote an article which forced the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, to come in front of the camera and explain himself over the pandemic treaty. It's easy to get people riled up over that kind of name. But the other one, this amendments, it sounds more benign. It doesn't sound quite as scary. Is this document just as dangerous as the pandemic treaty, or is it actually worse in what it contains?
Well, it's possibly worse. When there was a lot of kickback on removing the Fundamental Freedoms Clause from the pandemic treaty, that was done. The WHO's own working group decided that that wasn't a good thing to have in the pandemic treaty, but it's still in the IHR amendments.